Hi, I'm Ben. Welcome to my book corner. We're continuing with our banned books reads for 2024. This is the 24BB challenge, originally started off by the amazing MJ over at Reading This Live. Links down below for that one. And we're doing Pride Month, and unfortunately, for reasons that are generally stupid, there is a plethora of LGBTQ books that are challenged or banned in the US, simply because they're LGBTQ books or authors. So, little bit spoiled for choice this month, really. So, I thought I'd start with one of the more banned ones, or challenged ones, I should say. This book is Gay by Juno Dawson. So, the version that I've read is the version that was revised in 2020. This was originally, however, published back in 2014. And the best way I can describe this book is a humorous LGBTQ plus self-help book. As always, we're going to go over the banning information to begin with, before talking about a little bit what this book is about and how I found it overall. So let's get into the extensive banning information. Ban information then obviously focusing on the US for this one, because otherwise this will be multiple hours long, this video. As of 2023, this is the third most banned book or challenged book in the US according to the American Library Association. Now, specifically to 2022 and 2023, I'm again pulling from the pen.org index of school book bans, and this is the second longest list that we have had so far. And we have some, once again, repeat offenders in here. So what we will do is we'll go through the state and then cover every district in that state that has a book or challenge in place and what that ban status is, according to the report as of right now. So, starting off in California for the first time, the William S. Hart Union High School District banned from libraries and classrooms. Into Florida, some familiar names in here. Hillsborough County Public Schools banned from libraries and classrooms. Same for Marion County Public Schools, Orange County Public Schools, and Volusia County Schools. Moving into Idaho, we have the Kuna School District, where it's banned pending investigation. And in Iowa, you also have Iowa County Community Schools banned pending investigation, and Sioux City Community School District banned from libraries and classrooms. Massachusetts has Abington Public Schools banned pending investigation. Missouri has North Kansas City Schools banned from libraries. Pennsylvania is Central Bucks School District banned from libraries and classrooms. And also Pleasant Valley School District banned pending investigation. South Carolina, Hall County Schools banned from libraries and classrooms. Into Texas, we have Conroe Independent School District banned from libraries and classrooms, and Texarkana Independent School District banned pending investigation. Then into Utah, we have Alpine School District, Granite School District, and Washington County School District, all banned from libraries and classrooms. Pretty sure they've all come up before as well. And finally, we have Virginia, the Hanover County Public Schools, banned from libraries and classrooms. So, a number of bans and challenges there, and there are a few different reasons why this has been banned or challenged. The majority of the controversy seems to stem from the fact that this is, in many regards, a sex education book, and it's a book that really shouldn't be necessary, because this is something, like it or not, if you're talking about sex, we should be talking about this in schools. And it does have sex education content in there. It talks about dating apps like Grindr. It also contains various diagrams talking about sex. It talks about STDs and STIs. So there is an argument that has been made that this contains material that is not suitable for kids. Now, all I'm going to say is you would not give this book, probably, to an 8-year-old. But there's nothing in this that is what I would see as so far ahead of what we would teach in normal sex ed. So if you're going to put those books in schools, there's very little reason not to put this. And this does include some very specific information, and it does also highlight at points that certain things are illegal at certain ages, and it does have points where it points out that, you know, if you're under this age, shouldn't be doing this legally. That doesn't always stop people, though, does it? So, there we go. But I do want to read a quote, and this is from Fremont in Nebraska, which voted to keep the books on shelves. And this is a quote from the City Council President, Mark Jensen. And this was after a 3-2 vote, leading to this book staying on library shelves. And I think this encapsulates this perfectly, because again, just to be clear, this book is called This Book is Gay. It is very clear what this book is going to be about. If I didn't want to read a book about suspension bridges, I wouldn't go pick up a book that said this is about suspension bridges and read it. A public library has to have content for everybody, not just me. That was to service the entirety of the community. And that's very important, because this isn't some hidden messaging here. This book is very upfront, out and proud about what it's about. And it covers it on the back, it covers it on the contents inside. And let's be honest, if you're going into reading this book and you don't think this is going to have LGBTQ content, then I genuinely don't know what to say to you. But what does this book actually talk about? So what actually is this book? And I could break this into 4, maybe 5 subsections, really. The first one is the least important, and I'll get to the most important at the end, but we'll start with the least important. And there's a level of social commentary throughout this book. And generally speaking, I would say that it is warranted. There is a very clear idea here that you have the LGBTQ plus community and you have the straight community. And it's not saying that those two don't overlap, or anything like that, just to be clear. So we'll put a pin in that one. But it makes the point that straight people don't have to come out. And that is actually, in many ways, a really, really powerful point of disparity here. And it's something that needs to be borne in mind throughout reading this, because in theory, this book shouldn't really need to exist. Not really. Because everything should be equal. But societally, we're not at that point yet because of centuries of practices, be them religious, societal, or ideological, where one group is seen as normal, and if you're not part of that group, then you're part of the other. And by definition, if you're not part of normal, then you're abnormal. And you're not, and that's not fair. And there's certain points where looking at things like sex education, or just general the way that different groups are portrayed within media, and how harmful that sometimes can be, especially when you're leaning into things like stereotypes, which also this book does a good job of talking about. And it's not preachy with any of that, but it is there. And it needs to be there, realistically, because of the nature of the book. Next point is to do with humour. And this book is written in quite a light-hearted way for when it's covering some pretty dark and horrific things like the HIV/AIDS crisis, for example, and its place in some of the bigotry that we still see carried over into today, and some of the historical facts around that. But throughout the book, there is a level of humour in here, and how much legs that humour has will vary by reader, because humour is very personal to self. It reminded me a lot of when you watch a video and then someone will say something and a really over-the-top meme will come up on screen, which I find after a while can become quite jarring. So the humour didn't land for me as often as it would for a lot of people. But on the flip side, The aim of the humour is to make this more accessible, especially to a younger audience, and I suspect the humour would land better for younger readers than it does for me, because I am not in the real targeted age demographic for this book. Third one is to do with, I would argue, mental health. Specifically coping mechanisms, the process of coming out, making sure you're safe, positive reinforcement of you are valid. And also talking about identity and acknowledging that identity is a really complicated thing and really shouldn't be pigeonholed into labels. And finally, physical health. And this talks about things like safe sex, sexual practices, STIs and STDs, and health concerns that in some cases are more of a major concern in some parts of communities than others. And all that is covered within the book. And generally speaking, there is a lot of information in here. Is all that information currently up to date? Maybe not. Things have changed since the revision of this. In some ways, things have regressed. But there's a lot of stuff in here, especially around safe sex and sexual health, which are really, really important. It also includes a load of terminology and actually has an index in the back of terms and what certain terms mean. And again, the drawback with this is that language changes incredibly quickly. And that is something that needs to be borne in mind. But there's a load of terms in here which, especially if you are a young person, sort of venturing out into the world and wandering into the LGBTQ community in particular, there are terms that you may not be familiar with. This does a good job of doing a level of demystification of those things as well. And part of that is going to be the reason why this book is so banned, is because it's talking about STDs and sex and dating apps and things that we don't really talk about in schools beyond the idea of straight sex. And the whole thing in this is, if we're teaching sex ed to people, we should be teaching sex ed to people, full stop. We shouldn't be picking and choosing what we do and do not pick. And we should be educating people properly to make good choices. And from that regard, there's a lot in here that is of value. But it's not without its flaws. So let's jump into my overall thoughts about this one. I have thoughts on this book. And I'm going to start with the easiest one first. This is to do with book banning. And this book, the fact that this book is challenged and banned is stupid. And it's homophobia. I mean, it is that simple. And I'm going to justify that statement because the biggest argument tends to be there's inappropriate material for kids in this book. So first off, this book is a YA title, which means it's aimed at 12 and above. There's nothing in this book that is any worse than is currently being shown or described or taught in personal social education and sex education lessons. In fact, this is probably better than what is taught in a lot of those lessons and far more inclusive. Why would we not teach and talk to our children about having the confidence to be who they are and feel free to express themselves and learn more about themselves and develop their own identity and how that is going to change over time? Why wouldn't we give kids the confidence of that? Why wouldn't we talk openly about sexual attraction, realistically, and what that can look like for different people, and to help them understand? And also, if they then take the next step and then do engage in sexual acts, why wouldn't we talk about how to do so safely? And then tell them what the drawbacks are if they don't. It just feels like a no-brainer. But not just that, this book gives tools for how to deal with discrimination and bullying, specifically in this case to do with transphobia and homophobia, but the lessons kind of do still follow on the same way anyway, because you've got to be able to push back against these things in a way that is safe, and you need to know that resources are there and what to do in certain situations, and this gives examples of some things you can do in a way that keeps you safe. And the other thing this talks about, we don't talk about this enough, is the idea of what safe dating looks like, because newsflash, teenagers go on dates and do things that adults would rather they didn't do, whether you like it or not. All right? And this talks about how to make sure you're safe on a date, or if you're doing online dating, how to do that safely and what that can look like and what the various terms can mean. So you go in being educated and knowing what you're looking at. And if what you're looking at isn't what you think it is, how to deal with that afterwards. I don't understand why we wouldn't talk to people about that. And just to be clear as well, somebody is potentially going to say, oh, well, you can't go on online dating apps until you're 18. That's UK age anyway. And yes, technically true. It's not hard to get around age gating on apps, though. That's number one. And number two, you don't need to go on a dating app to find dates online. Facebook exists. I'm pretty sure that's got a age gate of 13. Just some food for thought there. And also, there's plenty of kids that I know whose parents have let them have access to social media younger than that. So, you know, nobody really knows that well what the kids go on social media, no matter how stringent you are as a parent. There is always a way around what you do. So you give them the tools to make the right decision. I feel like I need to be quite patronising about this. And yeah, the ban's just nonsense. Now, is this a perfect book? No. My scoring for this book is a 3.25, and there's a few reasons for that. The first one is the writing style wasn't for me. Simple as. The humour fell very flat for me throughout, and part of that is it's aimed at a younger demographic, and we're going to touch on that in a minute to do with something else. The second thing is this doesn't have as varied LGBTQIA plus representation as it kind of seems to suggest. It's very much focused on lesbian, gay, and bisexual orientations. And it does also speak around transgender issues and challenges as well. But Juno Dawson has done a whole separate book on that called, I think it's What's the Tea? Which I presume goes into that in more detail. I do know a lot of this has been added into this edition and wasn't in the original, which is where a lot of criticism has come in. But you do still have not great amounts of representation for intersex people, for asexual or aromantic as well. And it is worth bearing in mind. This is a great book for a cis gay male. And it's not a bad book for someone who's bisexual or lesbian and cisgender as well. And there is stuff in here for other groups to pull from, but it isn't as all-encompassing as you might want it to be, which is a shame because the stuff that is in here is actually really, really important, and there's some interesting facts and there's some good resources in here as well, and some good tips that can be generally applied regardless of your gender or your sexuality. It just isn't as wide a net as I think it potentially could have been. But on saying that as well, you do have to bear in mind that the author's writing from their own perspective, and that, as is always the case, is limited by life experiences. And they have got other people to come in and give statements, and in a couple of cases talk about things that they themselves could not talk about. It just doesn't quite cover the whole spectrum. But there we go. That's my thoughts on This Book is Gay by Juno Dawson. A book that really shouldn't be banned, and unfortunately is. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments below if you've read this and what you think of this one. Or if you disagree with any of the points that I've made, let's just have a conversation. Hope you have a good day. I'll catch you all soon.